The man who said no to $800 million. Why Robert Plant never returned. Introduction. Imagine you're sitting at a boardroom table. In front of you lies a contract. If you sign it, your bank account instantly receives hundreds of millions of dollars. The entire world would celebrate. Your old friends and lifelong partners are pleading with you to sign, but you simply look at everyone, stand up, and walk away. This isn't a scene from a work of fiction. This happened in real life to Robert Plant, the man who was the voice of a generation, the golden god of rock, rejected an offer estimated at $800 million for a single Led Zeppelin reunion tour. To many industry executives, it was unprecedented madness. To the fans, a bitter disappointment. But to others, it was the greatest proof of integrity in music history. Why is it that while bands like the Rolling Stones, Kiss, and AC/DC continue to crisscross the globe on endless farewell tours, Robert Plant prefers to play for small audiences at folk festivals? Today, we dive into the grief, the mysticism, and the stubbornness of a man who decided that the silence of Led Zeppelin was worth far more than any fortune. Chapter 1. The Blood Pact and the Grief of 1980. To understand Plant's no, we must go back to September 25th, 1980. On that day, the heart of Led Zeppelin stopped beating. John Bonham, the drummer whose power was the band's physical engine, passed away tragically. Led Zeppelin was no ordinary rock band. They weren't a group of talented but replaceable musicians. Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham were the four elements. They firmly believed the band's balance was alchemical. If one was missing, the magic would vanish. Just 2 months after Bonzo's death, the three survivors issued a short statement that shocked the world. "We wish it to be known that the loss of our dear friend and the deep respect we have for his family, together with the sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager, have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were." To Robert Plant, that wasn't just a press release, it was a pact. He hadn't just lost a drummer, he lost the man who protected him behind the scenes and gave the necessary weight to his voice. While Jimmy Page, the architect of the sound, always seemed willing to try again, Plant felt the band's spirit had ascended with the smoke of his friend's ashes. To him, Zeppelin was a living organism, and that organism had died in 1980. Chapter 2. The Live Aid Fiasco and Ghosts of the Past. Many of you who lived through the 80s remember Live Aid in 1985 quite well. It was the first real attempt at a reunion. The world stopped to watch. But what we saw was a technical and emotional disaster. What the public saw on TV was only the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was pure chaos. Robert Plant had arrived from an exhausting string of solo shows. His voice was at its limit. Jimmy Page was struggling with an out-of-tune guitar and visible personal issues. And Phil Collins, despite being a genius, had no time to rehearse Bonham's complex fills and unique groove. Plant later described that afternoon as a crime against music. He felt exposed, vulnerable, and above all, sad. For a man who prizes the mystical perfection of sound, seeing Led Zeppelin sound like a badly rehearsed garage band in front of billions was a fatal blow to his nostalgia. In 1988, they tried again for Atlantic Records' anniversary, this time with Jason Bonham, John's son. Another lukewarm performance filled with sharp arguments in the dressing rooms. It was at that moment that something snapped in Robert's mind. He realized Led Zeppelin was a time capsule. It belonged to the 70s and to youth. Trying to recreate that as a middle-aged man felt like cheap theater to him. He began to feel like a prisoner of his own legend. Chapter 3. The Golden Prison and the Contrast with Jimmy Page. While Robert fled the past to save his artistic sanity, Jimmy Page became the guardian of the museum. Page spent decades in the studio cleaning tapes, remastering audio, and organizing the band's archives with almost obsessive dedication. There was a silent hope in Page that by polishing the trophy, Robert would agree to hold it up once more. But Plant was already somewhere else. He fell in love with the music of the Moroccan mountains, the raw sound of the Mississippi Delta, and the delicacy of American bluegrass. The music industry didn't understand. Producers offered blank checks for him to put the leather pants back on and scream, "Baby, baby," in stadiums. But Plant said a phrase that defines his career. "I don't want to be a karaoke version of myself." Imagine the courage required to refuse singing Stairway to Heaven in packed arenas to perform experimental songs that perhaps no one knew. He traded ego for freedom. He wanted to know what his voice could do now, with maturity, not what it did when he was 20. To Robert, Led Zeppelin became a golden prison, luxurious, beloved by all, but still a cell that prevented him from moving forward. Chapter 4. The Final Triumph and the Indecent Proposal. In 2007, the impossible finally happened. The show at the O2 Arena in London. There were 20 million requests for only 18,000 tickets. That night, Led Zeppelin was flawless. Jason Bonham played as if his father's spirit were there. Robert Plant hit the notes with impressive dignity. Jimmy Page was, once again, the master of riffs. It was the greatest show of the century. By the end, Jimmy Page was radiant. He was ready to announce a world tour that would break all records. Rumors say that tycoon Richard Branson, of Virgin, placed the ultimate checkmate on the table, an $800 million proposal. The contract included customized private jets, exclusive resorts, and 35 dates in the world's biggest cities. They say Page and John Paul Jones signed immediately. But when the paper reached Plant, he reportedly tore up the document. To him, every dollar there smelled like selling his soul. Robert understood what Page didn't, that the night in 2007 was the perfect funeral, to go out on top with a victory, without the wrinkles and fatigue of a commercial tour. He didn't want to see Led Zeppelin decline on stage for the sake of money. He preferred the final image of the group to be that magical night in London. Conclusion. The value of integrity. Looking at Robert Plant today, we see a man who doesn't carry the weight of being a living statue. While many of his contemporaries struggle to hit notes their voices can no longer reach, Plant walks the stage with a rare lightness. He chose the harder path. It's very easy to say yes to nearly $1 billion. It is difficult to say no in the name of your artistic truth. By refusing to return, he protected our memory. He ensured that when we close our eyes and think of Led Zeppelin, we remember young gods, shrouded in mist and power, and not elderly men trying to reclaim a glory that time naturally took away. Perhaps Robert Plant's no is the greatest tribute he could ever pay to John Bonham, an acknowledgement that the drum throne is empty and that no amount of money in the world can fill the void left by a brother. Led Zeppelin remains immortal because they knew when to stop. But what about you? Was Robert Plant selfish toward the fans, or is he the last romantic hero of rock and roll? What would you do if you had that contract in front of you? Let us know in the comments. Your story with Zeppelin is what keeps this legacy alive. Don't forget to subscribe here to Backstage Archives for more deep dives into the history of music legends. We'll see you in the next chapter.